What's up, gamers? I hope you guys are all having a great day today, just full of so much positivity and happiness, dude. At least more positivity than Jim Ryan's feeling right now, because this is too good of a topic to not make a video on, so apologies if my voice sounds like absolute shit right now, but I'm pretty sick at the moment. But again, this was too good to not make a video on. We are getting reports that Jim Ryan is, in fact, quote-unquote, stepping down from his role as the head of Sony Interactive Entertainment and the head of PlayStation, which in other words means he is getting fired. Now, personally, I thought this was coming as soon as the FTC lost their case against Microsoft in blocking the merger of Activision Blizzard and Xbox, which, you know, now that we know that's pretty much all but confirmed to be going through, even in the UK at this point, you know, old Jimmy boy is probably on the chopping block because it really puts PlayStation in a strategically weak position. And also, Jim Ryan was a complete embarrassment throughout that entire process. Like, he was crying wolf constantly, pretending that Call of Duty was make or break for PlayStation, like all this wild stuff. So maybe it turns out to be a little bit more true than maybe we initially thought, because it seems like he is getting the axe a couple months after that decision from the court came out that the FTC could not block the acquisition of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard. So it looks like our boy Jim Ryan's time in the sun has come and gone, and he will be leaving us and this wonderful gaming community and no longer will be the head of PlayStation. Now, this is actually coming from Jason Schreier, which I know my eyes rolled as I said his name. I absolutely hate the guy. I think he's an absolute political hack job, and for the most part, anytime I can avoid using him as a source, I will. But this is coming from Bloomberg, the company he does work for. He's like the head gaming writer for them. So they have two individual sources confirming that Jim Ryan will be stepping down from PlayStation. And in matters like this, you know, say what you will about Jason Schreier, but when he comes out with a report like this, it's usually pretty spot on. They don't typically take risk like that. At a company like Bloomberg, we're not talking about like a Kotaku or Polygon or, you know, one of those crazy fucking gaming websites. This is actually like a pretty respectable company. So this seems to be all but confirmed at this point. So I don't know, man. I don't really know how to feel, because there's always like this conundrum when it comes to firing someone who's in charge. It's like, yeah, things could get better, but they could also get worse. And I know Jim Ryan has kind of pissed off the PlayStation community a lot recently when it comes to raising the price of the consoles basically in every market except the US, even though they kind of did raise the price of the console in the US by forcing you to buy, you know, $60 games in the form of a bundle, which effectively raises the price because it costs them nothing to include a digital download code for a video game you may or may not want in the first place. So they effectively raised the price globally on the PlayStation 5. He jacked up the price of PlayStation Plus just recently from $60 a year to $80 a year for the most basic tier just to play online multiplayer. You know, he also is kind of the person who's credited with raising the price of current generation games to $70. Sony kind of paved the way for that one and made it acceptable. But actually, as I was recording this video, we just got official confirmation that Jim Ryan will be stepping down. Sony just released a press statement. So let's go ahead and read through that right now. Sony Group Corporation and Sony Interactive Entertainment today announced that SIE President and CEO Jim Ryan has made the decision to retire in March 2024 after almost 30 years with the PlayStation business. To support Mr. Ryan in his transition, Sony Group Corporation President, COO, and CFO Hiroki Totoki will assume the role of Chairman of SIE effective October 2023, effective April 1st, 2024. Mr. Totoki will be appointed interim CEO of SIE while he continues his current role at Sony Group Corporation. Mr. Totoki will work closely with Sony Group Corporation Chairman and CEO Kenichiro Yoshida and the management team of SIE to help define the next chapter of PlayStation's future, including the succession of the SIE CEO role. Jim Ryan joined Sony Interactive Entertainment's Europe-based legal entity, Sony Interactive Entertainment Europe, which was then Sony Computer Entertainment Europe in 1994. Since then, he has held a number of senior positions at the company, including president of SIEE, head of global sales and marketing at SIE, and deputy president of SIE since January 2018, before being appointed SIE president and CEO. And then following that is a comment from Kenichiro Yoshida, which says, Jim Ryan has been an inspirational leader throughout his entire period with us, but never more so than in overseeing the launch of the PlayStation 5 in the midst of a global COVID pandemic. That extraordinary achievement made by the entire SIE team has been steadily built on, and PlayStation 5 is on track to become SIE's most successful console yet. I'm immensely grateful to Jim for all his achievements. Respecting Jim's decision to finish his long career at Sony leaves me with an important decision regarding his succession, given the significance of the game and network service business. We have discussed intensively and have determined the new management structure. We aim to achieve Sony Group's further evolution and growth through bringing even greater success to the game and network services business. And then following that is a comment from Jim Ryan himself. After 30 years, I have made the decision to retire from SIE in March 2024. I've relished the opportunity to have a job I love in a very special company, working with great people and incredible partners, but I found it increasingly difficult to reconcile living in Europe and working in North America. I will leave having been privileged to work on products that have touched millions of lives across the world. PlayStation will always be a part of my life, and I feel more optimistic than ever about the future of SIE. I want to thank Yoshida-san for placing so much trust in me and being an incredibly sensitive and supportive leader. And following that is a comment from Hiroki Totoki. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Jim Ryan for his outstanding achievements and contributions over his 30-year career at Sony, including the great success of launching the PlayStation 5. The PlayStation business managed by SIE is an essential part of Sony Group's entire business portfolio. I will work with Jim and the senior management team closely to ensure our continued success and further growth. I'm also looking forward to creating the exciting future of PlayStation and the game industry together with everyone at SIE and its business partners. Alright, apologies if there was any voice cracks in there. I'm like literally losing my voice right now because I am sick as fuck at the moment and my throat is literally on fire, but we got through that shit, man. So this sounds like the typical you got fired but we'll let you step down kind of statement. You know, the excuse of, oh, it was so hard to work in North America but live in Europe is complete fucking bullshit. Like, come on, bro. Really? You're gonna tell me that it's a pain in the ass to hop on the company jet or have your family fly out every once in a while, or I don't know, maybe have them come move over to the United States and live with you? Like, I don't buy that for a second, man. That sounds like pure fucking cap. What I think is happening is a mixture of two things. I think it does go back to the Activision Blizzard acquisition and how Jim Ryan really fumbled the strategy and embarrassed Sony publicly throughout it. I think he completely mishandled the situation, and instead of approaching it from the perspective that I would have, which would have been like, hey Microsoft, we'll help you get this deal through, but we want you to sign an agreement with us that also benefits us as a result of this merger and acquisition. And instead of doing that, they kind of closed the door and made an enemy of them by making it more difficult than it needed to be for Microsoft to acquire Activision Blizzard. So I think he made a really big strategic error on that front in his approach to handling the Activision Blizzard merger by Microsoft, and I think that plays into it because as things sit right now, this deal is going through. The UK has all but confirmed that they've reached an agreement with Microsoft and it's A-OK, ready to go, and the United States, we already decided that the FTC really doesn't have any sort of like meaningful case to oppose this merger. So from all perspectives at this point, this deal is going through, and Jim Ryan's attempt to block it was a complete and utter failure. Now, I do think there's a different perspective as well that I don't think many people are going to touch on, and that's, I think, that Sony is starting to de-westernize the PlayStation brand again, because they're losing a lot of ground in Japan at the moment. Like, we don't really talk about it too much because the PlayStation is a massive success, but it's not so much a success in the Eastern markets as it is in the Western markets at this point. The PlayStation PlayStation 5 is doing absolutely incredible in Western markets, but they've actually been losing ground in Japan for years at this point. And Sony has been catering more and more to a Western market, which has kind of turned off a lot of Japanese consumers, which is their home market, which they can always rely on, or at least they could in the past, to be an extremely strong market for them to sell their console, which over the years, Nintendo, mobile, and PC gaming has really been eating up that market share at a pretty dramatic rate. And a leader like Jim Ryan made a lot of controversial decisions over in Japan that pissed off Japanese consumers. I mean, even the decision to move PlayStation to the United States for its corporate headquarters. I mean, Sony's still a Japanese company, but they moved the entire PlayStation division from Japan to California. That was extremely unpopular. But then on top of that, small little things like changing the Japanese default button layout and making it the same as the United States button layout was something that angered a lot of Japanese consumers. Like, for example, like, it's the exact same controller, but in Japan, the X button does what the circle button does, and the circle button does what the X button does. So it kind of matches the Nintendo control scheme in Japan. Like, circle is their equivalent of X, essentially, even though the controller layout is the exact same. But Jim Ryan, being a Western leader, didn't give a fuck about the fact that, you know, the Japanese have always had it that way in the past, and therefore made like parity across all markets for the PlayStation UI and default controller layouts in video games. So small things like that went a long way to anger a lot of Japanese consumers with Sony and the PlayStation division. On top of that, issues like censorship, blocking Japanese developers from being able to release their games on PlayStation while Nintendo and PC were open for those games to be released on, has really gone a long way to kind of turn their home market against them. And I think this may be an effort in a sense from Sony as well to maybe double down and like try and regrow that market in Japan and revitalize it in a sense by bringing in Japanese leadership that's familiar with the expectations of that market share. So I think that's a different perspective to look at it from, because that is kind of an issue that does get overlooked, because the PlayStation 5 is doing incredibly well right now. It's setting all sorts of records. Sony's making more money from gaming than ever before. So by no means am I saying that the PlayStation division is hurting or doing poorly. It's just underperforming in the Japanese market where it should be excelling, and a lot of that has to do with Western decision making trickling into Japan and pissing them off. So, oh, and another thing I forgot to mention too, the acquisition of Bungie. You know, many people have called out Sony for overpaying for Bungie. They essentially paid $4 billion for Destiny 2, and, you know, of course they get the development team with that, but essentially everyone agrees for the most part that Bungie was a massive overspend and knee-jerk reaction by Sony to the news that Microsoft would be acquiring Activision Blizzard. Like, everyone pretty much acknowledges that they way overpaid for Bungie, and that may also come into play as well, because, you know, if you're spending company money frivolously or unnecessarily and not getting a good deal, then maybe that doesn't reflect too well with your bosses at the end of the day or the shareholders of Sony themselves. So that's also another factor that could be in play, but I'm always hesitant to celebrate when leadership gets fired at this level, because whether you like Jim Ryan or not, he's the good or the evil that we know in a sense. Like, he's done a lot of unpopular things, like increasing the price of the consoles, raising video game prices to $70, increasing the price of PlayStation Plus to $80, the stuff I mentioned in Japan. Like, he's done a lot of stuff that people don't agree with, but at the same time, he's also led PlayStation very successfully. Like, PlayStation is doing better than ever before. They're making more money than ever before. Their consoles are outselling Microsoft by over 2-1 at the moment. Like, they're doing incredibly well overall, and it's always kind of worrisome what's going to happen when a new person comes in and takes the reins, because maybe Jim Ryan really wasn't that bad, and the next person that comes in is going to completely dick us down even harder when it comes to unpopular decision making. We don't know. So I think this is definitely interesting. I think it was expected. I kind of like was talking about this in streams following the FTC court case loss, kind of saying like, I think Jim Ryan's on the chopping block because he fumbled this entire thing dramatically, and the approach I would have taken, like I mentioned, is to actually partner with Microsoft in the acquisition, so that way Sony could also come out as a winner in this situation for their support of Microsoft Microsoft through the acquisition process, which I think he completely fumbled that entire situation from a strategic standpoint and kind of burned a lot of bridges there with both Activision and Microsoft. So I don't know, dude. What do you all think about this? Do you think this is going to have a major effect on PlayStation? Do you think things are kind of just going to continue on same as they are right now with no real shifts or any noticeable differences over the coming years? I don't know, man. Do you think this is overall positive, negative? Let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to a very, very sickly gamer talk about this news. Apologies for the shitty sounding voice, man. Like, my throat is about fucking dead right now, and I don't really think I can talk much more without losing my voice. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this shit up. I appreciate y'all for checking out this video. Make sure to drop a like on it if you did enjoy it. And with all that shit said, I want to thank you all for all the support, and I will catch you guys next time.